You're an embarrassment to this family. My father, Harrison Vance's booming voice bellowed through the grand marble rotunda of the Vance Aerospace Gala, cutting right through the soft woodwind ensemble performing for 100 high-ranking defense contractors, regional senators, and live news cameras. Look at you standing near the service corridor in that cheap army uniform, pretending your little desk job in logistics gives you authority, while your brother spent 5 years carrying the entire legacy of Vance Defense on his shoulders. I stood motionless beside the gilded double doors in my dark army service uniform, my back straight, my palms resting flat at my sides, my right index finger subtly tracing the distinct raised notch on a tarnished silver signet ring inside my left coat pocket. A ring stamped with the military tactical clearance emblem Kilo 10. In the center of the illuminated rotunda, a 30-foot velvet banner read, "Celebrating the Vance Defense Expansion, Man of the Year Award for Ethan Vance." Beside my father stood my younger brother, Ethan, wearing a custom double-breasted tuxedo, swirling a glass of vintage scotch, a quiet, cruel smirk dancing across his lips. Standing right beside him was my former fiancé, Lucas, wearing a diamond-encrusted chronograph watch I had bought for him 5 years ago with my first overseas combat deployment bonus. You're an embarrassment to this family. I kept my tone deadly flat, utilizing the measured, unflinching cadence I had refined during 2 back-to-back deployments in Eastern Europe. You sent a priority legal directive to my base commander at 0400, claiming Mom's living trust required my emergency biometric signature to maintain her hospice care funding. I sent that summons to drag your ungrateful carcass out of those filthy barracks on live television, Harrison shouted into the wireless podium microphone, his gold cuff-length flashing beneath the crystal chandeliers as the gathered elite leaned forward, murmuring in hungry anticipation. I wanted every senator and defense investor in this room to see the parasitic failure you really are. You spent 6 years hiding in overseas warehouses while Ethan worked 18-hour days to engineer our company's $30 million automated drone defense matrix. Meanwhile, you refused to contribute a single dollar from your captain's pay to support your own mother's medical care. Lucas stepped forward toward the microphone, his face carved into an expression of calculated, disappointed sympathy that made my stomach turn to lead. "It's true, Maya," Lucas announced, his voice reverberating through the speakers. "Your psychological instability, your jealousy toward Ethan, and your endless bitterness ruined our engagement. Ethan built an empire that protects American soldiers. You're just a bitter ghost clinging to a uniform because you failed in the real world." A cold, hostile murmur swept through the grand hall. Defense lobbyists shook their heads in utter disgust. A lead defense journalist angled her camera lens directly toward my face, capturing every second of my unmoving posture. Ethan leaned into the podium microphone, his smirk widening into a weapon. "Give up the master clearance ledger, Maya," Ethan whispered smoothly, his voice carrying over the speakers. "You've been blocking our government contract approval for 6 months out of pure malice. Hand over your late mother's digital key code, or I'll have security throw you out into the snow." "The master clearance ledger doesn't belong to Vance Defense, Ethan. It belongs to the United States Department of the Army, and Mom never gave you that code." "She's completely unhinged," my Aunt Evelyn hissed from the front VIP table, raising her wine glass. "Security, drag this embarrassment off the premises before she ruins Ethan's award ceremony." 2 heavy private security guards in black tactical suits stepped rapidly out of the shadows near the grand entryway, closing in on my flanks. But before their hands could touch my uniform sleeves, the heavy oak doors behind them swung open with a massive, echoing crash that vibrated through the marble floor. 4 high-ranking military police officers, flanked by an iconic figure in a dark dress uniform, stepped into the rotunda. His chest was covered in 4 rows of combat ribbons, 3 silver stars gleamed on each shoulder, and his piercing gray eyes locked onto the stage with terrifying predatory focus. General Marcus Sterling, commander of the United States Army Material Command. The entire rotunda went dead silent. The 2 heavy private security guards stopped instantly, their boots skidding against the polished marble as they recognized the formidable 4-star general walking into the room. General Sterling marched down the center aisle without a single pause. He walked past my aunt, past Lucas, past my father, and came to a dead halt 2 paces directly in front of me. He brought his heels together with an echoing snap, raised his right hand to his cover, and held a rigid, flawless salute. "Captain Maya Vance," General Sterling declared, his voice cutting through the silent room like a heavy artillery round. "Operation Kilo 10 has been fully authorized by the Department of Defense Inspector General and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You have the floor, Captain." Harrison's hand twitched violently, sending his wireless microphone clattering against the glass podium with a deafening screech. Ethan's arrogant smile shattered into a look of sheer, unadulterated shock. "General Sterling?" Harrison stammered, scrambling to grab the microphone as his face turned pale. "What is the meaning of this military intrusion? This is a private corporate celebration. Maya is just a low-level supply officer who was reprimanded for administrative failure." General Sterling didn't even turn his head. He remained standing at attention beside me as I took 3 slow, deliberate steps toward the foot of the stage. I pulled the silver signet ring stamped Kilo 10 from my coat pocket and held it high under the direct glare of the center spotlight. The exact ring my late mother, Eleanor Vance, the co-founder and chief software architect of Vance Defense, had secretly pressed into my palm inside her ICU room 3 hours before she passed away. "6 years ago," I began, my voice echoing off the high marble ceiling with absolute, razor-sharp precision. "My father and brother informed me that Vance Defense was facing bankruptcy, that my mother's specialized neurological care cost $70,000 a month, and that if I didn't sign over my military power of attorney to Lucas, my mother would be evicted from her care facility." "Don't listen to her insane ramblings," Ethan yelled, taking a step toward the front of the stage, his hand trembling so badly his scotch spilled over his fingers. "She's fabricating stories. She was deployed. She knows nothing about our corporate architecture." I signed the military power of attorney, and for 72 consecutive months, $22,000 a month was automatically deducted from my hazard deployment pay, my officer disability trust, and my flight bonus pension. I lived in a freezing, unheated room off base, wore worn civilian clothes, and ate basic field rations, believing every single cent was keeping my mother alive in a private medical clinic in Zurich. "It was," Harrison shouted, grabbing the podium edges with white knuckles. "Every single dollar went to her international medical team." "Then why," General Sterling interrupted, unzipping a thick leather tactical briefcase and pulling out a red-stamped federal document, "does the official Department of Veterans Affairs database show that Eleanor Vance was transferred to a fully federally funded VA hospice center in Virginia 6 years ago, paid for entirely by her own late father's active military benefits?" The silence in the room was so thick you could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning unit overhead. Harrison froze like a stone statue, his jaw dropped open, every drop of color completely drained from his face. "You lied to me for 6 years, Dad," I said, my voice dropping into a cold, lethal calm that terrified everyone in that room. You told me Mom was in strict biological isolation in Switzerland, that visitors were prohibited by international health protocols. You sent me manufactured monthly progress reports stamped with a fake doctor's signature, just so you, Ethan, and Lucas could siphon over $1.5 million of my military pay to fund Ethan's gambling debts and Lucas's offshore investment portfolio. Maya, Lucas stammered, frantically taking 3 steps away from Ethan, holding his hands up in a desperate gesture of innocence. Maya, please, you have to listen to me. It wasn't my idea. Your father told me you were deployed in active combat zones and would never check stateside VA records. He said we needed the capital to keep the company's stock from collapsing. You sniveling coward, Ethan screamed, turning around and violently shoving Lucas against the podium, sending glass crashing across the stage floor. I forged them because your father swore he held full power of attorney, Lucas yelled back, his voice breaking into a panicked shriek as 100 prominent defense contractors watched the 3 of them tear each other apart on live television. Without saying another word, I walked straight to the main media terminal beside the woodwind stage. I inserted the signet ring Kilo 10 into the master security drive and entered my 10-digit military encryption passcode. The 30-foot velvet banner celebrating Ethan unlatched with a loud mechanical clank and fell to the marble floor, revealing a massive high-definition LED wall behind it. The screen flickered to life, replacing the corporate promotional reel with a real-time federal forensic audit ledger from the Defense Criminal Investigative Service, complete with red federal flags, bank routing trails, and decrypted wire transfers. Source account: Captain M. Vance, Combat Hazard and Disability Trust. Destination account: Ethan Vance Holdings, Nevis Offshore Trust. Total stolen funds: $1,584,000. Classified automated drone system Kilo 10, patented solely to Captain Maya Vance and Eleanor Vance. I said, turning to face the shocked senators and military contractors. You told this room that Ethan engineered the Vance Defense automated drone matrix. Ethan didn't engineer anything. My mother and I wrote that source code 8 years ago. Ethan stole our encrypted algorithms using the military power of attorney my father tricked me into signing while I was recovering from a shrapnel injury in Landstuhl. No, that system belongs to Vance Defense, Harrison shrieked, his voice cracking into a desperate, frantic scream. General Sterling stated coldly, "A military power of attorney obtained through fraudulent medical representation is a federal felony, Mr. Vance." At that exact second, the heavy oak doors of the rotunda opened once more. 8 armed federal marshals, accompanied by special agents from the FBI Defense Fraud Unit, marched down the central aisle, their tactical boots striking the floor in perfect, terrifying synchronization. The lead federal agent walked straight up the stage steps, stopping directly between Harrison, Ethan, and Lucas. "Harrison Vance, Ethan Vance, Lucas Miller," the agent announced loudly, his voice echoing off the marble walls. "You are under arrest for multi-year federal wire fraud, stolen military pension embezzlement, corporate identity theft, and treasonous theft of classified military defense technology." "Get your hands off me," Ethan shrieked as an agent yanked his arms behind his back, the sharp click-click of steel handcuffs ringing through the silent room. "Your company," the agent replied with absolute indifference, "was placed under federal receivership 30 minutes ago, following Captain Vance's submission of sworn affidavits and forensic military ledgers." Lucas offered zero resistance. He collapsed onto his knees on the stage floor, sobbing uncontrollably as an officer snapped cuffs onto his wrists behind his back. Harrison gasped for air as his expensive Italian suit coat caught on the podium edge while he was dragged down the steps, his entire corporate empire and social standing destroyed in front of every news camera and military buyer in the state. "Maya, stop them, please!" Harrison sobbed, his face contorted in frantic, pathetic terror as he was hauled past me toward the exit doors. "We are your family. You can't let these people drag your own father and brother to federal prison." I stood straight, my shoulders back, my chin held high, looking at my father with absolute, unshakable calm. "You called me an embarrassment to this family, Dad," I said softly, my voice carrying into every quiet corner of the rotunda. "And for the first time in my life, I'm proud to have nothing in common with you." As the federal marshals escorted Harrison, Ethan, and Lucas down the aisle past a crowd of horrified investors who were already canceling their defense contracts, General Sterling and the military police officers stepped up beside me. They didn't offer superficial comfort, they simply brought their heels together and rendered a synchronized, silent salute of profound military respect. Slowly, every senator, defense contractor, and veteran in the room stood up from their tables, breaking into a thunderous, rising standing ovation that echoed off the high marble ceiling, honoring the true officer who had stood her ground against absolute corruption. I held my head high, feeling the cold weight of truth, knowing that 6 years of psychological deceit had finally dissolved into the unshakable peace of earned justice. You cannot cure toxic family members by sacrificing your honor, your earnings, or your truth. For 6 long years, I allowed my family to manipulate my sense of duty, believing that my silent financial sacrifices were keeping my mother alive and proving my worth to people who only valued what they could steal from me. I let them insult my military service, belittle my achievements, and steal my combat pay because I foolishly believed that keeping the peace was worth any personal cost. But manipulative, greedy people do not view your patience as love. They view it as an invitation to exploit you further. They will steal your hard work, dismantle your self-worth, and attempt to publicly erase you, all while playing the victim when their deception is exposed to the world. Real peace does not come from quietly enduring abuse to protect people who harm you. Real peace comes from standing firm in your integrity, stepping into the light of truth, and allowing the unyielding consequences of their own choices to dismantle their lies. Never set yourself on fire to keep toxic people warm.